Let's be friends.
Have you not?
And here we go. Go. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, geeks and nerds and ambassadors everywhere, and welcome back once again to the Ambassadorial Wing. And it has been a while, obviously. Been a while since I have been live, been a while since I've done pretty much anything here. And, well, to quote the man, it's good to be back. To everybody that's watching out there on YouTube or X, hope y'all are having a great evening. Hope y'all enjoy the stream tonight. And tonight, I will be bringing you and a few other friends thoughts on Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. But before we get into that review, a few updates. What have I been up to? Where have I been? What have I been doing the last few months since my last stream back last year in December? Well, I've been doing some reflecting, been doing some taking care of myself, taking care of my health, getting my health in order, getting my back straightened out, getting my head straightened out. For those of you who know who, since last year, I've been dealing with some health issues and so on. Been getting those under control so that I can come back and do this thing that I love, this thing called YouTube, this thing called streaming that I honestly have missed. I have missed you all. And to the chat, everybody that's in there, Mr. Jacob Ironside. Jacob, it is good to see you. It has been a while. And I won't lie, I've missed you all. I have missed this. I have missed talking movies. I have missed discussing the movies and the TV shows that we love. But I need to get me taken care of first before I came back. And I'm doing better now. I'm not 100%. I'd say I'm about 95, maybe 95.5% better than I was back last year. But I needed some time to reflect on the channel, to get myself squared away health-wise, and bring you all my best, because you all deserve my very best. And from this month going forward, you're going to get exactly that, my best. So, going to be some changes in the format in regards to the channel. Live streams are going to be an event. Live streams are going to be held in reserve for those major releases that I am interested in going seeing and that I know that you all want to hear me talk about. They're going to be for watch-alongs. I've got some friends that can help me out with that. And I know watch-alongs are something that I enjoy doing, and I know something you all enjoyed doing with me. So, live streams are going to be reserved for special occasions and special movies. Does that mean the other reviews are going away, the ultra retro and the retro reviews? No, it does not. Those are going to be on the upload side of things. I'm going to be reaching out to some friends, some of who are here tonight, and I'm going to be putting together panels for people who want to do movie reviews with me. And the rules are simple. You watch the movie, I watch the movie. Whether it's me and one other person or several other people, doesn't matter. If it's a movie that you like, if it's a movie I like, if it's something I suggest or something you recommend. That's the shape of the ultra retro and the retro reviews going forward. Also, most of you know, last year I wrapped up my review series on Babylon 5 and its spinoff, Crusade. This year, we're going to be starting at least one new review series, and that is going to be on a show that I personally love, and I know a lot of people do as well. It's a very much a cult classic from the 90s, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, with all that being said, if you want to be a part of any of these projects going forward, my DMs are open on X, on Instagram. Obviously, you can reach me here on my YouTube channel under the community tab. It is open and it is being used. So, by all means, reach out to me if you have an idea for a review, or if I post something you're like, hey, Ambassador, I want to be a part of that. It's as simple as that. Watch the movie, have some good thoughts together, put together a good um, set of notes, and let's talk film. Because here, that's what we do. We talk film, we talk the shows that we love. So, but enough with the housekeeping. Get into the review tonight. Most of you know I have been waiting a very long time for the release of Dune Part 2 ever since it was announced back in 2021. And then when Warner Brothers Discovery literally gut punched all the Dune fans back in August of last year, said they were pushing it back until March of this year. Yeah, I was one of those people who was like, son of a Harkonnen, you dirty bastards. But they did. But I will say this, I say this with no hesitation whatsoever. It was worth the wait. I got to go see Dune Part 2 opening night in grand and glorious IMAX. And it was a wonderful, awesome experience. This theater was packed. I went to go give it a second watch yesterday, and it was glorious. It was just as glorious the first time as it was the second time. So, and I do want to say hello to all of you that are popping into the chat. My good dear old friend Mountains of Elysium. Elysium, it is good to see you, buddy. Appreciate you being here, and I know it's very late and over on your side of the pond. So, and happy UK Mother's Day to the missus and to your family and to your mom. So, but with all that being said, we're going to get into the review tonight. And as always, I have one of my dear old friends. You all know him. You all love him. If you don't, well, then you need to reevaluate your taste in movie reviewers because he's a good one. My friend and yours, Mr. Zach Leary. Evening, Zach.
Thank you for having me, man. It's great to have you back.
It's good to be back, my friend. It is good. It is good to be back. So, Dune Part 2. What'd you think?
Fucking glorious, man. I wasn't as excited as you were. I kind of had middle of the road expectations. I love Denis Villeneuve. I think he's one of the greatest guys we have available. And he's kind of shaping up to be an all-time great. I mean, he's so good. Everything he's done. I was impressed by just about everything in the movie.
Honestly, I was as well. I mean, Part 1 sets a stage. This one nailed nailed the landing as far as I am concerned. I mean, I know changes were made. I wasn't sure about how I would feel about those changes, but obviously changes were made. They were the directorial decisions. They were storytelling decisions, and honestly, they were decisions that I am honestly okay with. I mean, obviously, one of the biggest changes is the on-screen, full-time on-screen uh, appearance of Paul's younger sister, Alia. Obviously, we do have her inside of Jessica's womb, and we do have a future vision of her as she has grown up. I think portrayed by Anna Taylor-Joy, and I hope that I'd say it's a pretty much foregone conclusion when Denis Villeneuve does Dune Messiah that he was able to get her back, that we'll get to see more of Alia, because honestly, that was the one character I was always on the fence about. Of like, okay, how is he going to pull this off? Is he going to bring in another really good child actress to portray Alia, or is he going to do it different? Obviously, he did it different, but the story picks up at a nice pace. I mean, we have the introduction of Irulan Corino, the Emperor's daughter, played by Florence Pugh. Great performance by her. I mean, obviously we have Christopher Walken as the Emperor, Shaddam IV. I expected him to be a little more active in the movie, but considering Christopher Walken's age and so on, but the scene, anything, I understand he had limited screen time. There was a lot other factors or other elements of the story that they needed to focus on, but when he was on screen, his presence was most definitely felt. Your thoughts,
Well,
Zach?
he's been one of the most controversial elements of the film. A lot of people hated him, and that's something we can get to whenever you feel like it. But
We can
I
we can get into it right now if you want to.
sure. But let me first say that the child inside Jessica's womb, man, added a creep factor to her character,
Did.
didn't it? It was cool. It was a
Yeah.
good choice. I mean, it was an interesting adaptation. I
Yes.
had mentioned to you I'd watched some of the old Dunes after the
Mhm,
fact, after seeing this
mhm,
one, and despite them being disappointing, it was interesting to
mhm,
see the differences in terms of how the story played out. And of course,
mhm.
what is her name? Alda?
Alia.
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 Uh, yeah, stabs the Baron with a poisoned blade in the miniseries. So
Mhm.
that was an interesting difference. And you know, as somebody who's not a Herbert historian, um, it was interesting seeing that difference kind of play out because I had seen that years ago, and I had forgot that they that had done a time jump.
Yeah, in both the David Lynch movie and in the miniseries, there is a time jump. There's a more now David Lynch's version in the miniseries. Obviously, there's a 2-year time jump in the movie. There's, I think, about uniquely as much time jump in the miniseries, maybe a little bit more. In Denis Villeneuve's version, it's 7 to 8 months, is what I understood to be. So honestly, they he had his idea for what how he wanted the story to be shaped. Obviously, a full term pregnancy, regardless of the universe you're in, for a human is 9 months. So obviously, Alia was not born yet. So the change with Alia. Now, here's the thing: the change with Alia, what they did, and you brought up a very good point. The creep factor, or the Jessica's personality in this movie is very much different than how she has been portrayed in previous films. I mean, you have
Yeah,
Francesca
she's
Annis,
scary.
and
She's scary in
she
this one.
is there is almost a, I don't want to say a horror aspect because it's not really horrific or a horror like a horror movie, but there is a, it's disturbing how she behaves because once she takes the water of life and everything in that scene, you see her face as she's going through the spice agony, as it's called in the in the Dune universe, for a Reverend Mother. Sure. Rebecca Ferguson's performance, and not to mention the voice editing, the sound editing on her voice, making her sound like different incarnations of someone and different people from her bloodline. It is it's on points frightening because she is a very powerful Reverend Mother at this point. She's obviously more powerful than the Reverend Mother that tested Paul, Gaius Helen Hayim. And when Paul shouts down the Reverend Mother, I knew that moment was going to happen. But honestly, I like the fact that the way it was paced, the way it was done. But back to Rebecca Ferguson as Jessica, the wardrobing, the face tattoos, all of that, it just added to the uneasiness of what Jessica has become.
Yeah, the
And
creep
I think in
factor.
part, Alia also, yeah, I think also in part, Alia's behavior or Alia's influence was also a part of how Jessica was behaving as well. I don't know. I don't think it was manipulation, but the fact that you have a Reverend Mother and you have a preborn infant who has been exposed to the water of life, who is also anything once she is born. Ollie is born with all the powers and abilities of a fully developed Reverend Mother. You essentially have two Reverend Mothers wrapped up in one body. Not to mention all the past lives of all the other Reverend Mothers that were passed on from the old one that died that were given to Jessica. It's unnerving what Rebecca Ferguson was able to do with that performance. Not to mention the dialogue, her acting ability, everything, all of that just combined to give an absolutely dynamically unnerving performance.
Yeah, she was creepy, man, and she was definitely a highlight of the film. You know, she's got her own agenda. She's out there trying to help Paul. She's out there trying to stoke the flames of this ancient, um, you could say, artificial ancient prophecy. But they even
because it was something that was created by the Bene Gesserit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, and they even opened the film with a shot of this child in the womb. They opened the film basically like within the first 10 minutes. You see a quick
Yeah.
little snapshot of
Yeah.
that, and beautifully
Mhm.
photographed. You know, and that transitions us into another scene. Man, she was badass in this.
Yes, it was absolutely. And the dynamic between her and Paul, and even her and Chani. And I will say this as well: Zendaya's performance as Chani, that young lady has some really good acting ability. When she's given the right material, she can absolutely flourish as an actress, and she flourished here. So,
Yeah, she was great. I thought Timothy Chalamet was
yeah.
fantastic. I was really impressed by him. I thought he was good in the first one, but in
Mhm.
this one, man, I mean, he's got so many dynamic scenes he has to do,
Mhm.
and he rose to the fucking occasion. I mean, he was great in this.
Well, the thing with Timothy Chalamet's performance as Paul, he has to play several different aspects of Paul's character, because Paul, at one point, is for the majority of at least the first and second act of the movie, he's pushing against this becoming what his mother believes he can be, this Kwisatz Haderach, this essentially it is the male equivalent of a Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother, except to the nth power. He's
Which
more
they
powerful.
say has never happened.
No, everything, at least as far as as I've been able to study into the Dune lore, every other male or every other man that has taken the water of life, it's killed him.
Yeah.
Paul's been the only one that's been able to do it. The thing with Timothy Chalamet's performance is he has to play the reluctant Paul. He's playing the Paul who has, it's almost a Hamlet level um obsession with getting revenge on his father's death. I mean, everything he's doing is in essence to avenge his father being killed by the Harkonnens and by the Emperor, essentially. And you've got that dynamic in the background. You've got his relationship and his romance, and obviously he's in love with Chani. You have that dynamic at play. You have him he's fighting against the Fremen, seeing him as the Lisan al Gaib, the Mahdi, the Messiah. He doesn't want to be that. I mean, he says to his mother, you didn't give them hope, you gave them a lie," which is true. All the Bene Gesserit did was they lied to the Fremen. They created this false prophecy and fed it to them. Unfortunately, a lot of the Fremen bought it. And I will say this, even as a person of very devout faith, I can acknowledge um the commentary on the negative aspects of religious belief. As a Catholic, doubly so. I think the way that Denis Villeneuve handled it, he wasn't heavy-handed. He wasn't aggressive with it. He wasn't biased to any degree. He presented it in a way that I think Frank Herbert would have appreciated and would have, I think, endorsed.
Yeah. Well,
Paul is
would you call him a false prophet?
no. I wouldn't call Paul a false prophet to any degree. What I would say is he is fighting against becoming something that he does not wish to be. He wants to avenge his father's death, and he wants to destroy the Harkonnens, and he wants to destroy the Emperor because he knows that the Emperor was at the heart of all of it. He knows that these two people were responsible for the destruction of his house, well, in part at least, and the death of his father, a man that he loved. Obviously, if it was your father, or if it was my father, I would go to just about any lengths that Paul did. Paul is up against something that he's fighting so hard to avoid, but at the same time, he almost has to embrace to fulfill his will. He wants to destroy the Emperor, he wants to destroy the Harkonnens, but he doesn't want to be seen as this Messiah because he knows he isn't one. He's not a false prophet, but he's fulfilling the role of a prophet, even though he doesn't necessarily believe that he is what they say he is. But to get the Fremen on his side so that he can fulfill his plot of revenge against the Harkonnens and the Emperor, he needs the Fremen. He knows that there's no other way of doing this. So he's not giving them false hope. They're almost doing that in their own way. He's just stepping into the role. So, and Jacob Ironside, I do see your comments and everything, and we will get to them here in due course, bud. So I don't think I'm ignoring you. I'm not, or anything. But Paul is... he is very conflicted. Obviously, he's in love with Chani, but unfortunately, what he's having to do is driving a wedge between him and Chani because even Chani and I think we can actually talk a little bit about Jacob's comment here. I like Dune Part 2. The one of the biggest things I had a problem with was the character change of Chani. Jacob, I don't know if you've ever read Dune, the novel. You may have, you may not have. I don't know. I've never had a chance to read it fully through. In the previous adaptations of Dune, Chani stays with Paul. She's not against this idea.
And she kneels.
Huh?
She kneels too.
Yeah. Well, she acknowledges him as the Fremen Messiah, but in this version, you have a split with the Fremen, which I actually thought was a good move because obviously all of the Fremen wouldn't be just wholly on board with Paul being their leader, being the Mahdi, the Lisan Gaib, whatever name you want to call him by. But Chani leaving at the end, I thought was honestly a good move. Okay. Then Jacob, I can understand your issue. I mean, I had a little bit of issue with how Chani was portrayed in this, but do I think it was a detriment to the story? No, I think it added a layer because I think we all know that in time Chani will return to Paul. But she was wounded. She was hurt. If you see the expression on her face at the end when it's just her, Irulan, and Chani standing, obviously she cares about Paul because she's worried for him during the fight between him and Feyd-Rautha. But at the same time, she right now cannot reconcile the fact that he has taken on this role, even though it's necessarily against his own conscience in a manner of speaking. He plays into it, and you see him playing into that in that scene before at the start of the third act or during the third act when he's there with the council of all the different sieges and everything from across Arrakis.
Which was spectacular. I mean, that scene was spectacular.
Oh, man. It was. It absolutely was. I mean, the speech, his enunciation in the Fremen tongue, the music, the choreography, all of it and everything. I mean, she's the only one. Gurney Halleck has to pull her down so that she isn't the only one standing because even he knows If he wants to live, if he wants to survive, and Jacob, hey, here's the thing. I'm all for a adaptation of a story, but as long as it isn't an adaptation or a change that's detrimental to the narrative as a whole, I don't mind changes. I mean, Shawnee leaving at the end, her riding off on a sandworm. As I said, I think we obviously, if Denis Villeneuve gets to do Dune Messiah, which Warner Brothers and Legendary would be stupid not to do it,
Yeah.
considering where they left off, because they left right on a perfect point where they can do the third movie. Now, sadly, Denis Villeneuve has said that's as far as he will go. He's going through Paul's lifetime, which I
I
can
don't
accept.
blame him. I don't blame him because I've looked into that, and the books written by the children, that's getting dicey, man.
Well,
You
no,
know
no,
what I
no.
mean?
Here's the thing. No, no. Here's the thing. The Dune and Dune Messiah are the only two books where Paul dies in Dune Messiah. Children of Dune, uh, Heretics of Dune, or Children of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and so on. No, it's Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune deal with Paul and Chani's children. And then the last two books deal with the distant future, like several thousand years after the events of the first Dune book. I'm not talking about the books done by Frank Herbert's son. I'm talking about the other books that Frank Herbert himself wrote. Because there's 6 books in total that Frank Herbert himself wrote.
Yeah,
So,
I
but
got you, but
David,
I don't know. But it gets dicey the further you go along. I mean, will the audience accept him being assassinated and all this stuff? Yeah, I think they will, but at a certain point, um, I don't know. I mean, do we need 9 films? I personally would be happy
well,
with just one more.
I would be okay if they just do Dune Messiah, then leave it at that. That's fine. Would I like to see Paul and Charlie's children, Layla II and Ghanima? Sure, I would. I'm not gonna lie. Everything. I mean, the only adaptation we've gotten of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune is obviously the sci-fi miniseries Children of Dune. But I don't want to get too far off on a tangent here. I want to keep it focused on the movie. What I will say is this in terms of Chani's performance, or rather Zendaya's performance as Chani. What she does with Chani is I think, in Denis Villeneuve's mind, I think a good adaptation, maybe not fully faithful to what Frank Herbert originally intended, but I think having Chani being divided, being mixed, having mixed feelings about what Paul is becoming and what the Fremen are seeing him as, I think that is a good dynamic. I think it adds a added layer to the whole situation with Paul's relationship to the Fremen. He loves Chani. He wants to be with Chani, obviously. The only reason he takes the Emperor's daughter's hand is so that he can secure his claim to the throne. That's it. He has no feelings for Irulan. None whatsoever. She is a means to an end, nothing more. Now, do I believe him when he says that no harm will come to her? Yes, I do. But the relationship between Paul and Chani and the way Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya portray that relationship, it has a good, solid dynamic. It doesn't feel artificial or forced. She's still conflicted, but she still cares for him. And I think the fact that she left at the end was an even stronger sign of how much she does care for Paul. But she's
Well,
also heartbroken.
it also shows that she has a greater degree of autonomy than past incarnations, um, which builds her up as a more independent character who is a person who thinks for herself. So it's an interesting thing, but I also think there's a degree of realism to that too, where Denis Villeneuve is a highly realistic director, even in sci-fi. I mean, if you take a look at his past work, Arrival Blade Runner 2049. He's a guy who likes to ground things through character rather than you've got these fantastic elements, but his characters, man, are very human.
Yes. And you know, and that's the great thing. I mean,
But I will say
here's a
I respect Jacob's point of view on that. I mean, if you're a book
oh yeah.
purist, I get it.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, he brought it up here in Lord of the Rings. There were things that changed that I didn't like, but I love those movies. Same with Villeneuve's Dune. Yeah, same here. I mean, obviously they had to change things for Lord of the Rings. Obviously, they've had to change things for Dune. You're never going to get a one-to-one adaptation in any from literary work to either television or film. It's changes have to be made because you're going from one media transfer to another media transfer. You can't have a one to one because one doesn't flow into the other naturally. One's a different storytelling type compared to another.
Yeah,
We're
it's got a
not
different mechanism.
exactly. So the changes that Villeneuve made, I am okay with. I actually applaud him for having the guts to change because Dune is a book that is much loved. It has a massive fan base. I mean, I'm relatively
Well, he
speaking a novice in terms of what I know about the lore, but I love Dune.
I don't think that's being
I won't
fair to
lie.
yourself. I think you know what you're talking about, and
Well, I do
v-
know what I'm talking about there, but there are people there who know a lot more about Dune than I do. So
well,
I'm
yeah.
a
Um,
so there are people that have done research and a lot more discussion on it and everything. So, um, there are people that I acknowledge know more about Dune than me.
well,
It's just a
but some of
fact.
the changes though I think are really good. He made a couple of
Yeah.
changes with Baron Harkonnen, which I think were perfect changes. If you look
Yes.
at the initial concept, when Leto reveals the poisoned tooth and evokes that attack, he originally in the books kills somebody else who he thinks is Baron Harkonnen. I would rather have those two in the same room and together. It creates such a powerful dynamic. When
Yep.
originally he mistakes one of Harkonnen's underlings as the Baron himself in his state of
Mhm.
having been poisoned, that's a great change. And I
Yeah.
think having Paul, spoiler warning if you guys didn't know already, having Paul,
I think everybody here has seen the movie.
I hope so. Having Paul kill the Baron, I think, is a great change as well.
I agree. Here's the thing. As you mentioned, and most people know this if they've seen the Lynch version or the sci-fi miniseries version, Ollie is the one that kills the Baron. While that's a cool scene, don't get me wrong, it is. Because she forces the Reverend Mother to reveal the true lineage of who Muad'Dib is through the Reverend Mother that's not in the service but is attached to the Emperor. I love the fact that it's Paul that kills uh, the Baron because there's that
Yeah,
connection there. I mean, like I said,
absolutely.
it's
It's a
almost a
payoff.
well, here's the thing. In a way, Denis Villeneuve borrowed just a smidgen of Hamlet for Dune. Because think about it. What's the through line for Hamlet? Hamlet wants to kill his uncle because he discovers that his uncle killed his father.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in this case, but in this case, it's his grandfather who killed his dad.
I was stunned by that. I had forgotten that there was a
I
connection in the
hadn't.
Harkonnen lineage.
Yeah. It's actually spelled out a little bit more in the prequel books that Brian Herbert did with each of the individual houses of the Dune universe. House Carino, House Arcona, House Atreides. The Baron essentially assaults the Reverend Mother, Gaius Helen Mohiam, the one we see everything in this movie, the one that's talking to Irulan and so on, the one that's in the very creepy looking robes and so on. And she's actually Jessica's mother. Now, they don't reveal that particular aspect, but they do connect the linkage between the Baron Harkonnen and Jessica herself. So it still works. I mean, the
Which in the
punch is
go ahead, sorry.
no. It's fine. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, in this one, they reveal that she was unaware of it. Jessica was
Yeah.
unaware of the connection,
Mhm.
which I believe
And
is a through line between all adaptations. Correct?
yes, well, except for the Lynch version, they never really discuss it like at all.
Ugh,
It's never mentioned once.
I hate the Lynch
You know,
version was I guys. I was really just I mean I was pumped up about Dune 2. I went back and watched the miniseries and the Lynch version. The Lynch version was
mhm.
I was sitting there dying a slow death. I mean, it was torturous. And I like
And
David. I love David, but that movie is terrible, man. I mean, it was so
well,
bad.
the problem is it was cut down and edited and fixed and re-edited by the studio and everything else across the board. I actually did a review of it back couple of years ago in the early years of my channel and everything. And there are parts about that Dune that I really enjoy. There are some performance sizes I really like, and I mentioned that to you and everything when we were talking on X. Um, the one change that I kind of was a little bit of a disappointment to me, but it didn't ruin my experience, was the fact that we never found out about what happened to Thufir Hawat, because I love the character of Thufir Hawat and everything, and all the well except for the sci-fi miniseries, he's barely in it, but in David Lynch's Dune, Freddie Jones as Thufir Hawat, I loved him in that. And the guy that played Thufir Hawat in Dune Part One, I loved his performance. He was wonderful. But we get no mention of Thufir, so we just assume that he was killed during the Battle of Arrakeen. And that obviously Gurney Halleck is the only one that makes it out alive, because obviously Duncan Idaho dies, but in Dune Part One, he goes out like an absolute boss. Now, I'm hoping if and when Villeneuve gets to do Dune Messiah, that he's able to get um, Jason Momoa back as Duncan, because Duncan actually has a more fleshed out character arc throughout all of the original Frank Herbert books and anything than just the one movie that he's in or the one book that he's in. So
Yeah,
I'm
Jason
hopeful.
was great
I'm
in the first one. Yeah, he was
yeah.
great. Um,
So, but um, well, let me ask you, Zach. What did you think of? Let's focus on some of the baddies for a few minutes.
yeah.
What did you think of the? Also we got Christopher Walken as the Emperor. We've got Stellan Skarsgård back, obviously as the Baron.
Mhm.
We got the introduction of Austin Butler as Spade Routha. Obviously Dave Bautista back as Raban. What'd you
Wow.
think?
What a great group. I mean, that's a beautiful collection of villains, isn't it? I mean, it just is bliss. That is I mean, look, the movie was such it was such a great experience. And somebody who kind of designed, at least cinematically for me, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, um, the multi-pronged villain approach was Spielberg. And I love that about the first Indiana Jones, where you had the main character being kind of attacked on all sides. You had multiple forces coming after him. Um, in this one, man, it was beautiful. I mean, each performance had kind of a different element in it. It's like even Batista's character, who is kind of portrayed as like a weakling, kind of bootlicker type guy, literally in this one. um,
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
awesome. He was awesome. Him yelling, when he freaks out in like at the beginning of the film, kill them all, and he's freaking out. And it's like his body even goes into like a spasm. Kill them all. He crushed it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he fucking crushed it. I thought he was so fucking good. My respect for Batista is a 10. I mean, I love this guy. He's so good. He was great in M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. He was so good. And he was great in Dune or Blade Runner 2049. He's a legitimate actor, guys. I mean, he's not
He
just
is.
Drax.
He
He's fucking great.
he is, and My props, absolute respect to Dave Bautista from transitioning very effortlessly from the world of wrestling into being a full-on actor and a respectable one, a very respectable one. I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, was he great? Was he good as Drax? Yes, he was. I'm not going to say he wasn't, because he
He
was.
was awesome. Yeah.
But as Raban, Knock at the Door, I think it's called, the one by M. Night Shyamalan about the Four Horsemen.
Oh, he was so good in
Blade
that.
Runner, Blade Runner 2049. Obviously, I mean, granted, he only had a small part in that, but he had a good part in that, obviously.
He
And
had a
Denis
great
Villeneuve,
part,
obviously,
and he
he did.
lobbied for
And
that
obviously,
part.
Denis
He
Villeneuve,
lobbied for it.
yeah, and Denis Villeneuve recognizes and I think respects Dave Bautista's ability as an actor. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought him back. And you see, the thing I liked about the two movies and everything now that we have both parts is seeing the dynamic change in Raban's personality from where he's very controlled but ruthless and very sinister to very groveling and sniveling by the end. He's running away when he be the first one into the heat of battle. He'd be the first one into the heat of battle, rather at the end when Gurney is at the head of the Fremen army and they're taking back the city of Arakeen, and Gurney shout, and he's on the ramp into getting into the Thopter, and Gurney shouts "Raban!" And
Yep.
he turns around, he pulls out his whip, he pulls out his sword, and I would have loved a little bit more of a lengthier fight between the two of them, but honestly, it worked. For me,
And he
it
has a great line
worked.
there too. I
So,
forget his line. He goes like "back from the dead" or something like that.
yeah, look who it is, back from the dead. And
Yeah.
but, Gurney had a good line, for my Duke and for my friends.
Yeah. No, it's so good, dude. He was so good. Batista was great. But
Yes,
I think the show stealer is Austin Butler. And this is a guy
yes.
who I I don't dislike him, but I
Mhm.
kind of had like a middle of the road opinion of him. Like, okay, well, let's see how he does. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because
yeah.
he had been doing this Elvis voice for like 4
Mhm.
years or something, which I get. I mean,
Mhm.
he went full method for Elvis. I get it. Um,
Yeah.
but people were like, Is he going to sound like Elvis?" He
Obviously
he sounds
not.
like Stellan Skarsgård, which
He
is a pretty
does.
does. And
Yeah.
Skarsgård did an interview. I've been watching all these interviews with all the
Mhm.
actors, and Skarsgård tells
Same.
the story that he had met Austin Butler, um, and then and they got along great. But when they did the scene, he goes, he spoke to me with my own voice. And it kind of surprised him. He said, and later he asked him, "How did you do that?" And he goes, I watched all your films.
That's called respect for an
That's
actor who's
respect.
earned it. Yeah. I have to say, this is by far this honestly this buries every other the other two portrayals of Fade Routha.
Yeah,
Austin Butler is the
buries him.
quintessential Fade Routha. Buries him absolutely. I mean, and I will say this: I love the cinematography change for when they're on Gidi Prime, black and white, except for the scene between Fade Routha and Lady Margot Fenring when she's seducing him, and it actually goes into color. But seeing him in black and white, his teeth all blacked out, his eyes black, it's just creepy. It's unhinged. As they describe him, he's psychotic. He's
He was so
absolutely
good.
ruthless. His portrayal as Fade Routha buries both Sting and the other guy
Oh,
who played Fade in
Jesus.
this. I mean, it's
Buries him deep, man. I mean, it
and
was
and I will say this: I like the fact that we do not get introduced to Fade until this movie. They
mhm.
keep Fade off in the wings. We don't get introduced to him. We don't see him until obviously the trailer, but we don't see much of him in any of the trailers leading up to Dune Part 2. But we don't see him until he's introduced. when they're there on Gidi Prime for his birthday, for his gladiatorial birthday match against the last three Atreides fighters or slaves,
Oh,
and it is when the one guy brings his new fighting daggers to him, it is absolutely, he takes the blade, the shorter dagger and runs it down his son. I'm like, this guy is completely unhinged. He's talking to his three girlfriends or wherever he wants, and he's like, what would you like, my darlings? Some lungs, a liver? I love it. I absolutely love it. He is. I don't mean to sound like I'm gushing, but I am a little bit, because his Fade Routha is just that damn good. So, and I do want to say hello to chat to another good friend, Ace Melwick. Ace, it's good to see you. And yeah, even though you're late, I'm glad you're still here, bud. So appreciate you stopping in, and hope you enjoy the stream. I will say the scene between Fade and Margot there on Gidi Prime, where she seduces him, it is played so damn well, because here is a guy who is seemingly very much in control. And she seduces him. She brings him into his chamber. Obviously, she does the test of the box. And she just completely owns him.
Yeah,
just
well,
absolutely
they
complete. Okay, Ace. But that scene, there in the arena, and then with him and Margot Fenring, you get a great parallel of the different sides of Fade Routha. And that's what I love.
Well, the Bene Gesserit man are kind of like the deep state. They're out there manipulating everything. They're behind everything, and they're playing both sides, and they've got several candidates. The movie really makes them out to be kind of the ultimate villains, at least for me. But
they are in a lot of ways. They are.
Yeah, I think so. Do you agree with that?
I do, absolutely.
When you see Fade and the Baron talk after the arena battle, is another great scene where he goes, "I ought to drown you in that tub," and the Baron just laughs at him. He's like, "Don't get ahead of yourself," you know. But he becomes the Na Baron, which is a term, I guess, from the Dune books. Because I heard one of the troopers call him Na Baron, and I said, "What is that?"
I think it actually is a real world term. Let me look it up. Give me a minute, because I was actually curious about that myself, but I didn't get a chance. I should have, but I didn't. I didn't get a chance to look into that. If my computer will be cooperative.
But Fade is scarier than Baron Harkonnen, which is a pretty. I mean, that's wild. I mean, because Baron Harkonnen was terrifying in the first one.
Yeah, very much so. Actually, Na Baron is actually a real world term. It's the heir apparent to a baron's position.
Yeah, cool, man. Very cool. And apparently, Raban is the natural heir, but the Baron realizes that this guy's just not up to the task.
No, unfortunately, Raban failed. His orders were simple: get price production under control and back up where it should be, and take care of the Fremen. He failed at both.
I think not entirely based on his failure, though. I mean, the Fremen are formidable. We see the kind of thing he's up against. So in that way, you kind of feel for him, for Raban, who as we mentioned, we thought was awesome in this. There is a degree of empathy for him, really, because he's out there really trying to prove himself, even though he's a terrible person. He's trying to prove himself, and he's getting whooped.
Yeah, because here's the thing. As you know, here's the thing: is the Harkonnen military any means a slouch? No, it isn't. Could they have very likely taken down the Atreides on their own? Maybe, but against the Fremen, who are essentially fighting a guerrilla war and are extremely effective guerrilla fighters, and who are going to wreak absolute havoc on the whole damn universe. Not to mention, they're fighting on their home turf. They're fighting on their home world that they have learned to live in for generations. We're talking about generation upon generation upon generation. And the Harkonnens, as ruthless and as effective as they are as a military force, they are not up to the damn task. I mean, there's a scene and everything. It's actually a scene where we get reintroduced to Gurney Halleck when Paul and the Fremen attack his smugglers and their spice harvester, and they're sitting there in the tent in the aftermath. And Paul says to Gurney, he's like, "We don't have a whole lot of equipment. All we have is fear." And they fear is the main weapon of the Fremen. That and the fear of this mythic figure known as Muad'Dib, which is
Yeah.
actually we obviously know as Paul. But Raban is trying his damnedest and everything to fulfill his uncle's will, but he is frankly out of his depth.
Well, he even puts himself at risk and goes personally on one of these where they say,
Yeah.
"Listen, man, you should not go," and he says, "I'm going." Fade,
Mhm.
on the other hand, is just more. Um, he's more brutal, man. Even him killing his own guys. I
Mhm.
think the same guy that talked back to Raban, Fade just slits his throat.
Yep. And then says, "Take him off and everything because there was no food for my lovelies and everything on the trip here."
Highly disturbing. I mean, he's a disturbed, creepy character, and here's the thing: he's also physically tough and physically
Yes.
capable. So
Yes, absolutely.
unlike Baron Harkonnen, who is more of a mental
Cerebral. Yeah,
threat. Yeah, exactly.
cerebral. Yeah, absolutely. It's Harkonnen will get you in a unwinnable situation where he can absolutely destroy you. Fate'll just walk in, and whether you're capable or not, and he'll completely destroy you. And let's
Yeah.
be
Well,
honest here. Go ahead.
Baron has experience, so
Yeah.
you do see Fade kind of relying on the Baron's counsel once or
Mhm,
twice, especially at the
mhm.
end. He's like, "Why are they here? Why are they here?" And he's obviously got the Baron present in the war chamber, looking at their offensive. Uh, it- but I think Fade really lacks experience, so he's still relying on the Baron in the film, but. Their dynamic was interesting to me. I mean, the Baron is clearly impressed with him. Tests him, the "Show me who you are." Great line.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, and kind of realizes this is kind of the next guy.
This is my heir. This is the guy that can take over after me, and he even says it, "Make him emperor." And that's a frightening thought, Fade Raltha as the emperor. But here's the other kicker.
Well,
The
it's
Bene Gesserit.
foolhardy too. Do you think the Baron actually believed that, or is he just trying to manipulate fate?
No, I don't think he was trying to manipulate Fade, but I mean, is there affection between the two of them? No, but he does respect his nephew, and he does see his nephew for the person that he is. He's grown him since he was a kid. I mean, you remember what the conversation between the Bene Gesserit and Leo Margot Fenring and Erlen there on Carino, and when Erlen mentions that Fade killed his own mother. This is a kid raised by his uncle, groomed by his uncle to be his heir and to possibly very much be on the throne. The only problem is the Bene Gesserit, through Margot Fenring, know how to control Fade, humiliation, and seduction.
Yeah, well, controlling others seems to be their game.
Precisely. Yeah,
Yeah.
precisely. And the Reverend Mother says to Irulan, yes, of course we ordered the extermination of the Atreides because we can't control them. We couldn't control Paul's mother, even though she was one of us. We couldn't control Leto because his will was too indomitable. And obviously, at this point, they know they can't control Paul. He's gone beyond them. He's gone beyond their ability to manipulate him to any degree. He's more powerful than them mentally and most likely physically. He can take out any spy, any assassin that he sees fit. I mean, yeah, I will say this. Of all three duels that we have seen between Paul and Fade Rautha on screen, whether it's the big or small screen, this one had more weight to it because Paul does get hurt. He does get stabbed, but he survives.
It actually
Now,
made me nervous, and I knew he would
yeah,
live.
yeah, even though we know he will ultimately live through these events, the fact that Faye does get a couple of good hits on him and does actually stab him,
Mhm.
it built that tension, it built that suspense, and it worked. It completely and totally worked.
Well, you're seeing a guy do justice to a story that deserves it. When you
Yes.
look at the Lynch fight, he kicks Fade in the balls. I mean, how embarrassing.
Yeah, that's a
I
real
mean,
world move. By this point,
there's
this is the far distant future. It's the 10,190 191. And I'm gonna tell you right now, a kick to the balls, we've evolved beyond that. At least we better have.
yeah, well,
So
Lynch brings the fight to 3rd grade. It's like, "Come on, dude. What are you doing?" Um, but look, the whole thing, I think, does justice to a story that deserves it, and this is really, as you
does.
said, the definitive Dune so far, and, it's gonna be hard to surpass this version in 20, 30 years if they do it again.
They're not gonna be
It
able to.
do you wanna talk about Chris Walken?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because we've talked about Raban, we talked about Fade, we talked about the Baron. Yes, let's move on to
All great.
one of
We
our
gotta
favorite
talk about the
guys.
Baron separately, though, because I have some thoughts on
Yeah,
him too, but so both of
sure.
them,
Sure.
awesome. We both
Yeah.
agree, awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
So Chris Walken, man, I've kind of brought this to your attention, took some flack. People were pissed. I saw comments saying that he sucked, he was a detriment to the film, that he didn't fit in and all this stuff. What's your take on it?
I respectfully, and I mean that, I respectfully disagree. I th- I was hoping for a bit more screen time with him, but at the same time, you've got so much story that you're putting into almost a 3 hour movie. Something has to be cut somewhere. But I will say the scenes with Christopher Walken, whether he's speaking or not speaking, just his facial expressions, he brings it. I mean,
Yeah.
his relationship with Irulan I liked very much in this. I mean, there's genuine fatherly love for his daughter. I mean, also, but professional respect because he says to her, you'll make a great empress." And he's right. If she had been able to become full empress, she would have been great. Here's the thing. And I know this might be a bit of an in joke, but at the same time, I think it's an in joke some people may get. A number of years ago, there was a music video done um, by the group Fat Boy Slim called Weapon of Choice. That Christopher Walken, he's the central character for. He does a very dynamic and wonderful dance routine. But there's a line in the song, "Walk without rhythm, don't attract the worm," which obviously for most people would be a reference back to Dune. So do I think maybe Timothy Chalamet is a fan of, or not Timothy Chalamet, Denis Villeneuve is a fan of Fatboy Slim and remembered that music video? Maybe, but at the same time, I think obviously Denis Villeneuve recognizes great talent and authentic talent when he sees it, and he knows that Christopher Walken is a top-notch talent.
Yes.
His granted his screen time was limited, but his screen time when he was there was
People,
impactful, and it was
the
wonderful to see
problem
him.
people had with him was the performance. It was not the lack of screen
I
time.
thought
I I've seen people
I,
shitting on him all over the place.
I thought his performance was good. So I had no issue with his performance. I thought he brought a balanced and a nuanced performance, which is what was necessary. I mean, okay, granted, he's not.
I'm going to defend him too, but
Yeah,
I am curious to hear your point of view because the original emperor that I think people were expecting was a lot more authoritative. If you look back at the both previous adaptations, he was a guy who
mhm,
seemed more
in
energetic
control. Yes,
and energetic.
yes, I will agree. I mean, I'm not sure how old for Walken is per se, but I don't think he's that old that he couldn't have been had a little more
80.
physicality. But at the same
Yeah, he's
time,
80.
I think he's 80. Okay, so he's not that old. He's not that out of shape, obviously. But I think Villeneuve was going for a particular dynamic with the Emperor. Because here's the thing again, we don't see the Emperor until this movie, where in previous adaptations, we see the Emperor right at the jump. We keep the Emperor hidden behind a veil. And I think it was a good move on Villeneuve's part.
But it maybe not because it also builds up suspense and then
Yeah,
you reveal it like an elderly guy, which I still love Walken's performance, but
I
maybe
did.
that's the wrong move
Honestly, here's
to build him
no,
up,
I don't
to
think. Well, here's the thing. Let's look at it this way. You have the theater, you have the elements of a very imposing and powerful imperium with this very powerful and respected and even feared individual. Then you bring the face of the empire to light. It's a man who's not necessarily very remarkable. He's an elderly man who rules over a vast empire that is very much ruled through theatricality and fear. Let's be honest here. Denis Villeneuve, and I think even Frank Herbert and everything, because like again, I don't know how the Emperor is portrayed in the first Dune book because I haven't been able to. It's been a while since I've read it, but I think Denis Villeneuve and Frank Herbert, if it is in fact the case, is giving a bit of commentary on maybe not current politics, but politics in general. Because let's
yeah.
be honest here, in a lot of ways, politics throughout the centuries, you don't have to narrow it down to current by any means. It can be politics and political theater throughout history. Oftentimes was done through theater and fear. I think
Yeah, well,
that seeing this elderly man who is seemingly at the end of his reign is honestly at the end of his reign because Paul takes his
yeah.
place as the emperor. I think honestly was a good move, but that's me.
I agree with everything you said. I mean, I think the description of him being at the end of his reign is totally accurate. I think even though he's not a man who is physically sick, he's politically sick, where he is in an impossible situation. He's on his way out regardless, at least in my opinion. I mean, based on what the
Yeah.
movie presents me in this portrayal, is that the Bene Gesserit are done with him, and they're done with the bloodline as well. They even mention, to his
I mean,
daughter.
yeah,
Well, what do they say to his daughter? They basically say it's not going to be you.
it could potentially be her, but they say we have several prospects. What exactly the Reverend Mother says to Irulan is we have several prospects, not, and that's why we were willing to destroy the Atreides. Obviously, Irulan would follow any agenda that the Bene Gesserit go through on. That's not even a question. She's a Bene Gesserit herself. She
But
trained under. Mhm.
that conspiracy itself reveals the political weakness of the emperor.
In a matter of speaking, yes, the Emperor specifically himself, sure. But his family in total, no, because here's the other thing. If in fact I'm gonna say it not necessarily as a foregone conclusion, but I think there's a very strong case that will Dune they will let do Villeneuve do Dune Messiah. We will see one of the other Emperor's daughters because he has more than just Irulan. He has, I think, at least one or two. I think he has one other daughter, maybe two, and we'll get introduced to the other daughter in Dune Messiah, most likely, because she has a vendetta against Paul because of what happened to her father. Because and obviously Irulan can't really do much because she's right under Paul's gaze. She can't be as crafty and manipulative as somebody who is millions or billions of miles away, obviously.
Well,
So,
you know, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was done, Zach. Go ahead.
Um, it's a part of the thing I've been hearing, and I've paid particular attention to this because I was shocked that people hated Chris in this. And there's a significant number of them. One of the things I kept hearing was that the emperor was not imposing. They expected an imposing, powerful figure. But I don't think the movie wanted that. When you look at even the first scene with him, the statement is, and the emperor said, dot dot dot. They take a beat. Go ahead, you got it.
Nothing.
Yeah. So that's not a powerful man at the
Yeah,
helm. That's a
and
guy who's waiting around to see what happens. That's a reactive, weak leader.
yes, like I said, the Imperium is ruled through theater and um, fear. Obviously, the theater was the whole thing, the whole ceremony there on Caladan in the first movie because they played that up. They play that up big time. They spend all that money when Leto asks um, Thufir, "How much is this ceremony going to cost him?" And Thufir tosses out an astronomically large number. Um,
He had 2 million.
there's the theater,
It was like
two
2
million
million.
Solaris or
Yeah.
2 million Solaris or something like that. Yeah, and the fear is the army, the Sardaukar, because they are an extremely effective, extremely brutal military force. You have all that theater and all that fear hiding a reactionary ruler, which I think honestly was a very good dynamic for this story.
He's kind of
Because
like the
ultimately,
Wizard of Oz.
in a manner of speaking, yeah. Obviously it's not a perfect comparison, but it's a pretty good I think it's a pretty good comparison, yes. Because even at the end, the emperor kisses Paul's ring. He realizes he's beaten. Even though the other great houses have said they will not recognize Paul's ascendancy, and then he's like, okay, fine, take them to paradise,
Well, a real
send
man,
them to hell,
right?
whichever.
A powerful, strong man would not have kissed the ring there. He would have died, right?
Well, in every adaptation, the emperor lives. Paul lets him live, but he sends him into exile.
Well, it's another character trait, so we could even point to that as a point of inspiration for this depiction, where a real man,
Mhm.
knowing he's defeated, I mean, would he kiss the ring of the new emperor?
maybe not, but I think he was under the impression either he does it or he's dead. And I think he'd rather live, even though he's going to live in shame from that day on,
Yeah, exactly. In
than
shame.
just yeah. He would rather live in shame than die. To him, his life is more important than his honor or his reputation.
Well,
Because
you
let's be
can make
honest here. Go ahead.
well, you can
Go
make a
ahead, Zach.
good sorry, I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry. You can make a good case for Denis Villeneuve's adaptation here based upon the actions of the Emperor. Him going to Arrakis personally shows how uh, um what's the word? How um what I'm missing the word here.
How imperative he
Desperate,
feels that it is.
desperate.
De-
Yeah,
that's
desperate.
yeah.
Yeah, how desperate he is.
hmm Well,
But
and here's the thing
why would
too.
the emperor go personally and put himself in harm's way? He's desperate. He needs to get this under control.
Well, in every other version that has been shown, the Emperor always goes to Arrakis. Always. The issue is this.
No, I know. But I'm saying
Is
again, pulling from the source material, I
Mhm.
think you can make a case for Denis' adaptation
Oh
because
yeah, I agree.
only a desperate man would put himself in harm's way like that.
Yeah, and well, yeah, and the in this situation, the Emperor in every adaptation is desperate. He needs to get spice control under control. He wants to destroy Muad'Dib, and he wants everybody to see him do it. And ultimately, he doesn't. His army is destroyed. The last of the Harkonnens is killed either by Paul or Alia. And in a manner of speaking, Paul puts on his own political theater, but he does it better. Because here's the thing.
Yep.
Here is the thing. Paul is a fighter through and through. They put him among the Fedaykin, the best of the Fremen fighters. They give him his name, Usul. They give him his public name, Muad'Dib, which he picks, which is true in all adaptations. Every single one, he picks his public Fremen name, and it becomes a curse. It becomes a symbol of fear. It becomes a symbol of domination. It becomes a symbol of rebellion, open rebellion against the Imperium. Because
It's a
before now,
badass name,
that
isn't
too.
it? The
Yeah,
Desert Mouse.
yeah, a desert, a freaking desert mouse makes grown men literally piss themselves. That is political theater in a nutshell. But not only that, Paul backs it up. The Fremen destroy the Sardaukar down to the last damn man. Then, when the other great houses show up on Arrakis, he's like, okay, fine, you try and land here. I'm going to destroy all the spice fields on Arrakis. There will be no more spice ever. I
Yeah,
will
well,
kill
that
all the
nuclear
worms.
arsenal is
Yeah,
integral to him.
yeah, exactly. So, but Paul doesn't just destroy, he deconstructs the emperor and the Harkonnens. He's like, I am Atreides. I survived. My mother survived. My sister will survive. And we will stand over your bodies smiling. Grant, he doesn't say that, but you can imply it. And in a way, he does that because he's gloating over his grandfather as he lays there dying, and then he says, give the Baron's body to the desert, and then we see Vladimir there rotting on the sand of Arrakis with ants crawling over his body as they eat him a little bit at a time. And I can't help but say to myself, well, Baron, you got your Dune. You got your Arrakis. You'll rot here now.
Well, do you remember the question I asked you about him?
Okay, you've asked a few.
about
So
the Baron and the Emperor.
you're gonna have to refresh my memory. I'm sorry.
Okay. Would the Emperor have killed him?
His every intention was going to be such. I mean, he has him crippled there, laying on the floor in his portable throne room. He has his Sardaukar disable him to where he can't move. I think he has his repulsor system disabled. I'd say most likely, yeah, the Emperor was going to kill him right then and there, or
Wow.
maybe take him back to Carino to do it there if it had played out that way. But obviously, it didn't play out that way. Paul ended up killing him. He got his revenge. But yeah, I think the Emperor had every intention of killing Vladimir because he failed.
That's wild. I mean, that's a show of strength right there for the Emperor. I think at the end he becomes, in his desperate attempts, he becomes pretty dangerous, kind of
Oh,
like a cornered
cornered animal.
fox. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
I liked Chris in this, man. You know, a lot of shit talking out there, but in the
let him.
scenes
You know what?
that
Let him.
mattered, I think he carried himself very well. You know, the line, "Your father was a weak man." I love that line. I think it was delivered expertly.
It was.
Um,
But I don't
when he
agree
goes,
with it. But yeah.
well, kind of. I mean, it's sort of. I sort of agree with him. But the Emperor, I thought, brought it, man. I mean, when he goes, "More, give me more," you know, very good. So he can be intense in those scenes where it's called for, but
Yes.
even in the more somber scenes, he brought a lot with his eyes and
Mhm.
with just his facial expressions, even
Yes.
without much dialogue.
Well, that's a sign of a good actor when they don't have to, even if they don't have a whole lot of dialogue, that they can convey thoughts and feelings through just their facial expression. And let's be honest here, Christopher Walken has a very expressive face. He knows how to um, evoke many emotions just with his face. So, to me, that's a sign of a good actor. So,
Yeah,
and I'll
I
say,
thought he
you know
was
what,
subtle.
and
I liked him, man. I don't know what to tell you. I liked him in this.
as did I. Well, let's get to the last of the baddies and everything, and that's of course the Baron himself. So, what did you think of Skarsgård in part two?
I thought he was different. I thought he changed. There was a difference. I think a major difference. He's weaker. In the interviews with Stellan that I listened to, the Baron has been badly wounded by that attack by Leto, more so than I think we had, originally thought. Where
Yeah,
he's now got these orbs connected to him, and Stellan said this, so I think we got to take him for his word that it came from Denis. That these two orbs that have been added to him are some kind of life support system, which is
and
why the
that's
Baron is so actively searching for an heir. So, and apparently, the only direction he gave Stellan was he's weaker. That's it. That's all he said about the character. He's weaker.
yeah. Obviously, he didn't have as much screen time in this movie as he did in the first one, but I'm okay with that because you had other characters to focus on. So that wasn't a big downgrade for me. The other adaptations of the Baron, the one from the '84, I absolutely despise. I hate that
Ugh,
performance
me too.
of the Baron. The one by Ian McNeice, the sci-fi miniseries, I thought that was a major upgrade, a major
Mhm.
upgrade.
Yep.
But Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Harkonnen, he brought a lot of complexity. Granted, very evil and tyrannical complexity, but complexity nonetheless to his portrayal as the Baron. Obviously, he is weaker in this version because, as you mentioned, that poison that Leto breathed on him was a lot more potent than we've seen in other adaptations. obviously, as well, he's advanced in age. We don't know how old the Baron is, but he's getting up there. We can imagine. So those two factors in concert, yeah, it's everything. He's definitely weaker in this, but he's still got that indomitable will. And obviously, we have that scene where he goes into a rage, and we see it off screen. But he kills two of his attendees and everything. We see his body; they see their bodies laying over, crumpled in the corner of the room. And then he tells Raban, "Get this under control. Get Spice Production back. Destroy the Fremen." And he sinks back into that pool and everything of oil or whatever it is that he's
that is it has been implemented in this version to heal him, unlike the Lynch version.
Yeah, and even the sci-fi version. Yeah. Oh, obviously we see him on GD Prime during Fade's birthday gladiatorial battle, and his performance there was just right on the money. He's absolutely just, he's in his domain. He's at home. He's secure. He's surrounded by his sycophants and his people. That's I think, in a manner of speaking, that's the most evilest person at his happiest that we've ever seen.
Yeah, well, he's smiling. It looks like he's having a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
The event. And
he's
rolls
smoking
up
his. Yep. He rolls up in his repulsor throne. He's smoking his hookah. Yeah.
Which the throne was added too, which implies he's another sign of his weakness.
Yeah.
But he is weak. He is weaker in this one, but still a commanding presence. And you get more of the brain too in this one because of Fade relying on his counsel.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in a lot of ways, if Skarsgård's performance doesn't work, the rest of the movie doesn't work. I mean, he is very integral to everything else clicking as well as it does. I mean, let's be honest here. Every performance is integral to the other. If one doesn't click, the whole thing just comes to pieces and everybody just clicks. Everybody just works. There was a great synergy amongst the cast, both with the villains and the protagonists alike. But I will say,
he was so good.
He was great.
Happy birthday,
dear nephew.
Yeah. He was good, man.
He was. It's Stellan Skarsgård. You can expect nothing but the best. I can't wait to see him in season 2 of Andor as Luthen.
Boy, was he fucking good in that, huh?
Oh, and I don't know.
He was so good.
I don't know if this will introduce. He was. I don't know if this will interest you at all. It may not. They're going to be releasing Andor in a Steelbook Blu-ray set. I'm definitely getting it.
Yeah, I would be interested in that for sure. But for me, he's the entire appeal to that show. I just love him, man. He's so good.
And hey, I get it.
He's so good. He steals the whole show for me. He's so good. You can, guys, look back on his career. He's been killer for fucking 30 years.
Even when he was playing Eric Selvig in the MCU, he was good.
Yeah, and that's a shitty part.
Yeah, but I think he enjoyed it. I do. Yeah. I think he enjoyed it.
He's so funny. He doesn't do many interviews, but I've seen most of the ones he's done. Guys, by the way, he just did a career retrospective, which I recommend to everybody. I mean, he was so good. One of the few interviews he's done to promote the film, but he talks about all his past films, and he telling this story about Thor, and he goes, "I was locked in this van with these women," and he goes, "I didn't know how they talked about men. I was very surprised."
But yeah, I mean, I think honestly, yeah, but I think we spent enough time on Stellan and the Baron. So let's move on.
Okay, one last thing. He got his comeuppance. Okay, I loved seeing him at the end where he's like, "Oh fuck," when he sees the Emperor show up. Fade's asking, what do we do now? He doesn't even barely say anything. He's just looking at the ship like, oh, I'm fucked. And seeing him drop to the ground was awesome. Just his weight finally.
Yes,
and by the way, the weight of his actions too. So you see him finally get what he fucking deserves. He was a piece of shit, but a very enjoyable piece of shit. And I loved him in the whole thing. Stellan is a fucking bad motherfucker. Love him. Anyway, we can move on now.
Yes,
love Stellan. Love that guy.
All right, let's move on to the protagonists. Let's move on to the good guys. We've got Paul, we've got Chani, we've got Jessica, we've got Stilgar, and we've got Gurney Halleck, obviously. So, of those five, where do you want to start? I mean, we've already discussed Jessica for the most part. So, if you want to skip her, you want to focus on the other four, we can.
What a beautiful film, man. I mean, all these great little character arcs, great parts. I mean, it was such a joy, this film. I mean, just you mentioning the the options. Let's start with Javier Bardem.
Stilgar? Okay, absolutely. Yeah. Javier Bardem is an actor that has very much grown on me. I will admit. Because my first real exposure to him was his villain in Skyfall.
I love him in that.
Yeah. I do too. And over the years, I mean, I loved him as Captain Salazar in the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie. He was so good in that. He was one of the high points or everything of that film. But he has very little screen time in the first movie, obviously. He has like one or two scenes, and that's it. In this one, we see a different angle of Stilgar. He is I'm going to say this, but I say this in a respectful way. He is the quintessential fanatic. He is the true, unadulterated believer whose faith cannot be shaken to any degree, regardless of what anyone says to him. He believes that Paul is the body, he is the Lisan al-Gaib, and he's willing to lay down his own damn life so that Paul can be the leader of the Fremen. And Paul's like, no, I'm not going to kill you. What do you think? I am stupid?
No, that was badass. Dude, that scene where he says, kill me, and he goes, what does he say? He basically says, I'm above you.
Would I cut off my own hand or shatter my own blade?
Yeah. Oh, so fucking good, huh?
I mean, that scene there in the council chamber when he's like, would I cut off my own hand or shatter my own blade just before a battle? Am I going to kill one of our very best? No, I'm not. Stilgar, I need. He is one of your best leaders. He's one of your best fighters. I need him with me. I don't need him dead. Him dead does me no damn good. But Stilgar is the fanatic. He is the absolute unadulterated fanatic that just believes. He sees what he wants to see, but at the same time, he does see, I think, what a lot of other people see, and I will say this. Did he buy into the Bene Gesserit propaganda about the Lisan al-Gaib? Yeah, he did. But I think it gave him a purpose. It gave him a reason to live. It gave him a reason to survive for as long as he has. And in a way, that's not an inherently bad thing, because here's the thing. What is the shortened version of fanatic? Fan. We are all fans. We're all fanatics about something. But at the same time, being a fanatic can blind you. And I think Stilgar is a cautionary tale of what blind, unadulterated belief or faith can do to a person. And this particular case, it's not.
He succeeded. You know, I mean, I think he may be better off for his misinterpretations. You know, he's become very valuable, and he's totally essential to Paul and his rise.
Yeah, I agree, because Stilgar is very much respected amongst all the Fremen, even the non-believers, the doubters, and everything, which Chani is among them. But at the same time, Stilgar is, I think, a cautionary tale for what pure unadulterated fanaticism and religious belief can do to a person. It
Yeah,
can, in
I agree.
some ways, it can destroy you. It can blind you to the truth of a matter.
Hmm.
Now, saying this as a person of very devout faith, does my faith blind me? No, it does not. I am a logical and reasonable believer. But at time, I don't take everything that any religious organization says just on faith. My faith is in a higher power, something that cannot necessarily be described through words or necessarily reason. I believe
Well,
because of what I have experienced and what I know.
that is
But
another
that's a different.
great. Well, that's another great part of the film, is the concept of religion within the film. And
Yes.
you see, for certainly Jessica. I wouldn't say Paul does, but Jessica certainly
Mhm.
is manipulating people. There's no doubt about it. I mean, she even says, "Let me attack the
Yeah,
poor."
absolutely. She is.
She
She
says,
even
"I'm gonna attack the poor first."
no, she said, "Let me no, attack the weak
Okay,
ones, the
even worse.
non-believers." That's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah. But you're
so.
right. I mean, that what a great part of the film. That's an interesting dynamic, man. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, Herbert was doing commentary on many different things through the works of the Dune books. One of them was obviously politics, but another them was obviously organized religion. And I will say specifically organized religion, even though I am a member of one of the largest organized religion or one of the largest factions of organized religion in the world, Catholicism. I am a
Mhm.
Catholic. Do I recognize that there is good people doing good within the church? Yes, I do. Do I recognize there are bad people doing bad within the church? Yes. But does that devalue my faith in God, in Christ? No. But that's another conversation for another time. But I think with the
But you're
Bene
right.
Gesserit,
It's a cautionary tale is what we see in this.
yes, absolutely, because the Bene Gesserit have manipulated the Fremen for generations into this belief. Because even in the first movie, the Reverend Mother says to Jessica, "A groundwork has been laid on Arrakis that might be of use to you, but that's all we will do." So, and just want to say, Ace, good night, buddy. Good to see you, and I will definitely see you around. I will be in touch. So, get some rest, buddy. And I do want to say hello to another old friend, face I haven't seen in a while, Mister LDG. Good to see you, bud. Appreciate you being here. And yes, fanatic arrogance. I would say yes, there is a touch of fanatic arrogance with Stilgar and the other Fremen. Absolutely, it's um, it's very evident that there are Fremen that will just blindly believe what they have been, in essence, I don't want to say programmed, but what has been propagandized to them for years on end by the Bene Gesserit. But in this particular instance, the question is Paul doing this for a selfish reason or an altruistic reason? I think
Selfish.
the answer,
That's my
I
belief.
think it's, I think it's a bit of both.
Okay. Well,
I
that's an interesting question too. See, it's a dynamic fucking film, man. It's so good.
Yeah, it is. Here's where I think it's both, or well, it's both. Paul is using the Fremen, yes, to get revenge on for his father's death, but he also believes in the fact that the Fremen should have free reign of Arrakis, that they shouldn't have to be under the heel of anyone, that they should be able to live free as they are intended, as they've always intended, that they should be able to turn Arrakis or Dune into a more hospitable world because they have been working for generations. If you look at that one scene between Stilgar and Jessica, they're in the siege and they're staying next to that huge, absolutely massive water reservoir that is seemingly just deep it can't be fathomed, and gives that very poetic line, "So many souls." Because every drop of water that's in that reservoir, not to mention all the other ones spread across Arrakis, that's all the water that they've either gathered through the wind traps or from the people that the other Fremen that have died. That's why that line by Jessica is so powerful when she says so many souls.
which is a freaky ass
It's a
scene too. I mean,
powerful.
even them extracting water from the Harkonnen corpses is kind of creepy.
Mhm. It is in a way, yes, but at the same time, Stilgar says not good for drinking, but all the same good for the cooling system. So it does have some use because it's got too much it's got too much chemicals because they're Harkonnen, they're from Gedi Prime, they're around too much chemical pollution and so on.
Mhm.
But at the same time, all water has some sort of value, has some sort of use to them.
They,
So
I looked up the question on Google. I said, "Are the Harkonnens human?"
yes,
And yeah,
they
the
are.
answer was yes. But they look freaky as hell.
Well, here's the thing. Gedi Prime is a very much an industrialized world, is fully industrialized. It's very toxic. It's very poisonous. So, and the people, the entire planet is essentially just a massive cult of the Harkonnens themselves. Because if you look at the stadium, every single person is pale as a damn ghost and has got their head shaved.
Yeah.
Every person.
Yep.
But if you look at the Fremen, they and the thing I will say about the Fremen in this, not just of Stilgar himself, I like the idea that they aren't just Arabic looking, they're not Semitic looking per se or Arabic looking, but they're also people of color all across the
Yeah.
board,
Yep.
which I think is a great parallel, and I think honestly is a more faithful adaptation of what Frank Herbert would have wanted. I don't think it was by any means a woke, even though that word's completely lost on meaning at this point. I don't think it was necessarily a progressive choice. I think it was a authentic and a proper adaptation and interpretation of what the Fremen should look like. I like that
Yeah.
idea. I like that move.
Well, I'll
So,
say this about Stilgar too, because we kind of went off on different tangents about the Furman, which is
yeah,
a part of the conversation, of course. But
yeah.
him personally, I thought he was funny. He was a necessary comedic relief to the film.
He
There
was.
was a he brought down the tension, and
He
that's
did.
great. I mean, and that's also an interesting part for a guy like Javier, who is known
Mhm,
for doing villains. And
mhm.
I thought it was a dynamic portrayal. You could tell he cared, but at the same
Yes.
time, there was a sense of humor. Like he was a regular guy. He was a leader, yes, but there's a middle class appeal to him, which is
Yes.
very important.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, even I've watched some of the interviews with Javier as well in regards to Dune Part Two, and he's like, and even some of the other actors and actresses have he was so funny in this. And generally, you don't think of him as funny, but it does work. It's a nice paradigm shift from just his full on blind fanaticism to he's okay. There's several scenes, but the one I like in particular is when Gurney is back with him, and he tells Paul about the atomic arsenal that Leto had hidden there on Arrakis, and Stelgar's like, they hide in plain sight. They're like, yeah, it's the last place you would think to look. He's like, I didn't look there. They're like, exactly. You know this world, you know
Yeah.
this planet as
Yep.
well as anybody. You didn't think to look there. It's hidden in plain sight practically. It's in a little alcove in the side of a mountain, but nobody thought to look there. And Stilgar, he's just Jacob, I will put a link for Zach's channel in the description. You can also follow Zach on. I know you're on um, Twitter or X as well. You can find him under Storybeam at Storybeam
TV, Storybeam
Storybeam
TV.
TV. So,
I
um,
appreciate it, man. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate that.
Hey Jake, just go under my follows and everything, or my followers and everything, and you'll find him there. It's under Storybeam. That's Zach's channel.
We basically
So
we're just doing cartoons at the moment. We got hey, by the
good
way,
cartoon.
this man here is a producer on our cartoon, and he's great.
Thank you. So, but anyway, back to
Yeah,
Stilgar.
I have one more comment on him.
Sure, by all means.
He also brings a savage element to it. At the end, during the attack, he looks like a badass motherfucker sitting there about to attack. That's one of my favorite little close-ups where they kind of zoom in on his character, kind of sitting there. That dude, I mean, he's scary too. Scary, funny, very dynamic.
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
He was awesome. He was fucking
He
awesome
was.
in this.
I have, like I said, I have never seen No Country for Old Men, but it's on my list of movies I'm going to buy,
It
and
should
definitely
be.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a list. It's ever expanding between me and myself and Mam and Baster movies that we want to buy and add to our collection. But definitely, No Country for Old Men, I'm definitely going to get down the road. But actually, this is a little bit of a reunion for No Country for Old Men, if you think about it, because who else is in this besides Javier Bardem? But heaven's sakes, Josh Brolin, who also, it's a little bit of an MCU reunion as well, because who does Josh Brolin play but Thanos, and who does Dave Bautista play? Drax. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of an MCU and a oh damn, I just said it.
Country for Old Men.
Oh, No Country for Old Men reunion.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a good segue to, of course, Mr. Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck. I mean,
I thought he was great too.
I will say this. Josh Brolin is a very close contender for my all-time favorite Gurney Halleck, but of course, one of my favorite Gurney Hallecks will always be Patrick Stewart.
No, I disagree.
I mean, I liked him as I did. I did. I loved him as Gurney Halleck, but I will say this: Josh Brolin, with his performance, he kind of he stole some of the scenes that he was in, particularly with Shawnee and Paul.
Well,
and
Patrick Stewart is not physically imposing. I think that's a critical part of it. And by the way, this is a fun piece of trivia. I'm not sure if you know this, but if maybe you do, your audience will certainly appreciate it. Is David Lynch had hired a guy named Patrick Stewart, who he thought was a bodybuilder by the name of Patrick Stewart. And our good friend, our esteemed, as moviegoers, Sir Patrick Stewart showed up. He'd hired the wrong actor for Gurney.
No, I did not know that. That's funny as hell.
And Patrick Stewart, I'll send you a tape of Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart told the story. He says, I was the wrong guy. David Lynch made a mistake, but when I showed up, it was too late. He thought he hired the other Patrick Stewart. So,
that's hilarious.
But I love Patrick. I do love Patrick Stewart, of course. I mean, how could you not?
Yes, of course.
But
yeah, obviously.
But Brolin is a bad motherfucker. I mean, he's a savage physically.
He is.
He's a tough looking guy, and
he is.
I don't know. I get what you're saying. I do love Patrick, but Brolin brings a physicality to the part that I think Patrick Stewart just cannot portray.
And I agree with that. I do. Do I think their acting ability on par with one another? Maybe a little more so with Patrick Stewart, but yes.
I agree there too.
Josh Brolin more physically imposing? Is Josh Brolin's physical ability better than Patrick Stewart's? Yes, absolutely. I will agree with that. So there's obviously going to be differences with acting ability and so on, and obviously physicality, and they have to play into those things for the performance and how they want to portray the character. Do I think Josh Brolin's Gurney is just as good, if not a little bit better than Patrick Stewart? Yes, because here's the other thing too. There's a different dynamic between Gurney and Paul because obviously Paul cares about one of his teachers, and he's essentially
Yeah.
family. He's one of the few family members
Yep.
he has left besides his mother. So obviously Thufir's gone. Obviously Duncan Idaho's gone. Obviously his father's gone. Dr. Yui gets killed. All those things. Gurney is his only real link back to his Atreides roots, aside from his mother. But his mother has kind of, and we
Changed.
talked about this at the start
Yeah,
of the review.
she's not the same person.
Jessica has changed. No, by no means. But Gurney, I think, is a stabilizing element, but at the same time, Gurney is a realist. I think he, in a way, reminds Paul of what his end goal is, and that's revenge for the death of his father, and ultimately for all of his friends. And I think Gurney brings that back to more of the forefront for Paul. Now, the one thing I will say that I do like that they kept as a through line from the other adaptations, when Gurney and Paul reunite there and everything during that brief battle, he calls him "you young pup." I love that they kept that line. I absolutely love they kept that line because that's a very important line and everything. It establishes a connection, but reestablishes that connection between the two of them. So obviously we talked about the big payoff for Gurney, him getting revenge on Raban, everything during the Battle of Erkine, and he just absolutely delivers that line just so perfectly. This is from my Duke and from my friends.
Yeah. Well, I'm
It was
glad
just,
we gave a little bit of a spotlight to Raban because I have not heard a word about him, but I love him.
well,
And
yeah.
he is kind of he's the Grievous to Obi-Wan in this. You know what I mean?
And
They are
and
they're
Maris,
natural
yeah,
adversaries.
yeah. Gurney Halleck and Raban are natural. Yeah, I would definitely say they are the two of the natural adversaries. They are the two standard bearers for their two respective houses in a lot of ways. So Fade does supplant Raban, but Raban still has his own influence and he has his own directive that he wants to follow through on. He has his own through line that he's wanting to do. He's still trying to appease his uncle, even though he has honestly failed at this point, and he's
Yeah.
trying to run. He's trying to survive, a sign of a weak man, where he's trying to run
He,
off.
yeah. Well, he stays. Gurney
As you,
stays.
yeah. Well, Raban stays, and he ends up dead. So you could
True, but
say that Raban
Gurney
also.
stays too. What is he doing? He's like a pirate or something? He's a spice smuggler or
Oh,
something.
he's a spice smuggler. Yeah. Well, I'm talking there at the there with the conclusion of Raban's
Oh, I got
character
you.
arc.
Yeah,
He
he's
and
fleeing.
he ends up ends up fleeing, but in the last minute he decides, he's like, no, I'm gonna go take out this guy because he's one of the people I thought I had gotten, but I obviously didn't. So he's like, I'm gonna at least get this right, and obviously he doesn't. Gurney ends up
Well,
killing him,
arrogance
and
got him killed.
yeah, I would agree. The other thing is, I mean, we have the conversation between Paul and Gurney during the final the final confrontation and everything between everybody there in the residence and everything, the castle. When Gurney says, "Let me kill him for you. You shouldn't dirty your hands with this," and Gurney's
Yeah.
and Paul's like, "No, this is my fight. I'm fighting it." Obviously, Gurney relents.
Well, he cares about Paul. That's what that shows you.
Yeah, yeah, obviously. Well, that he wants that last little measure of revenge against the Harkonnens because he has a huge, massive grudge, and justifiably so, against the Harkonnens. So
He
yes, he does
does,
care.
but to me, that's not a sign of he wants more revenge. I think his revenge was paid off
Yeah,
already because he wants to
and that may
protect.
be
He wants to
yeah,
protect Paul, who is kind of a surrogate son, as you said, a
yeah,
teacher. He's a kind of a father figure. And a link,
yeah,
as you said, to his past, which is very
yeah. To the
important. I mean, even the Duke ring
mhm,
was a very interesting object, which was used sparingly, but I think to great effect.
effectively.
Yeah.
Well, there's a good, and and that's a good. I think that's a good segue to obviously Paul, because we have discussed Paul a little bit, but I want to spend the last little bit and everything here.
Well, Gurney loved him. Just to wrap
Yes,
that up,
yeah,
Brolin
obviously,
he's not subtle, but he's great.
yes, I would agree. He's a very he's a very talented actor who has refined his craft throughout his career, which is something that is to be respected. I agree.
And his father was a bad motherfucker too.
Yeah, James Rowland, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes,
He comes from a good lineage of
he does.
actors, particularly his father. As for Paul, Timothy Chalamet as Paul, you mentioned the ring, and he takes the ring out, he's got it on his hand, and he says, "Father, I finally found my way." He's and he has. He has found his way. He's found his way among the Fremen. He has found his way as a Fedaykin, as a fighter, and he's a very effective fighter. But he also carries this burden. Granted, it's a self-imposed burden of revenge because he wants revenge for the death of his father, for the destruction of his house. But he's also fighting against this outside exterior force that he's trying to, at every opportunity, repel. He's trying to
Mhm.
stave off the vision he had in Dune Part 1 and everything, where he first gets exposed to a massive dose of the spice, and he sees him and Chani on the ship above one of the worlds, and he sees a holy war spread across the galaxy in my name and my father's name. I see legion, I see billions of people dying because of me, and he's like, I don't want that.
Which is definitely heightened in this sequel,
Yeah,
where you see it
uh,
multiple times.
yeah. You see, he can't see exactly who it is, but eventually we do see that it's his mother, and you see all those silhouetted figures that are starving and dying on a barren wasteland. And Paul realizes that it's his mother that's fanning the flames of this legend known as Muad'Dib. And Paul doesn't want this. He says to his mother, "This isn't hope; it's a lie. It's a lie that the Bene Gesserit had fed these people for generations on end." And Chani echoes that very much so. She's like, "This is
I
how they control us."
I'm conflicted about him because I think the worm, water of
The water
life,
of life.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think changed him. And to me, that's pretty clear in the film. I mean, he's a
Yeah.
different guy coming back to life, and
Well,
he's
here,
more
here's
like
the
his
thing.
mother.
Well, here's the thing too. And if obviously he states it, but if you let it disappear, it can very easily disappear if you don't remember it. When he acknowledges the fact that he is half Harkonnen, that his mother is Harkonnen herself. So he says that we will be to beat the Harkonnen, we will be like the Harkonnen. And in a lot of ways, you see the Harkonnen tendency, that Harkonnen persona very subtly but very powerfully emerge in Paul. But he doesn't let it control him, but he uses it when he needs to. That's the change that comes. He becomes more benevolently tyrannical in a way.
Yes.
He is not as ruthless and as cold-blooded as the Harkonnens are, but that tendency there for domination and control does exist, because when he's there in the council chamber, and yes, that scene when he's there amongst all the other Fremen, and he's giving that very impassioned and very powerful speech, which he delivered perfectly.
Yes.
When he says, I am the one that your mothers warned you about. I am the dream that you have had for generations. And now it's here in front of you and you hesitate. Timothy Chalamet's performance as Paul is, it's haunted, not haunting, it's haunted, because he is haunted by a future that he doesn't want to see come to pass, but unfortunately is now going to come to pass. He doesn't want to be the Kwisatz Haderach. He doesn't want to be the Lisan al-Gaib, but he knows to fulfill his objective, he has to be. He knows to free the Fremen, he has to, unfortunately, destroy the Imperium and all the other great houses so that he ultimately has control. He knows that for the Fremen to be free, that they are going to have to shed blood, because there is no other way, because the other great houses will not recognize his ascendancy. And he's like, okay, fine. If you will not kneel, you will die. Here's the thing. I'll say one more thing, then you can go. Paul takes no joy in any of these things that he does. The only joy he takes is in killing his grandfather and also killing his cousin, killing Fade. But that's the only joy for him here. The rest he is doing because he knows that is the only way that the Fremen can be free. So go ahead, Zach.
I see him as far more cold after he drinks the water. Now, and I think he does change. I mean, to me, there's a dramatic shift within his character, within his soul, right?
Yes,
I
agree.
and I think for the worse, actually. Um, but I will bring this up. I mentioned this to you after I saw the film. I miss dramatic yelling in films. I mean, every time he raises his voice is fantastic. I mean, in the council speech at the end, silence, awesome, awesome. I mean, you don't get those kind of theatrics in modern films. And I thought he kind of walked away with the film, which I was not expecting. I mean, the first one, my favorite character was the Baron. In this one, I mean, my favorite character is Paul. I thought he was good. I was so impressed by him, and I mean, wow, wow. I mean, it's also, you're seeing a guy kind of turn to the dark side in a way, where you're seeing him be co-opted by this prophecy himself, a guy who was reluctant. And I brought up Anakin Skywalker to you. And I see a comparison, man. I mean, this is really a guy who managed to kind of walk the line and keep a piece of himself, and yet I do believe he's changed. And again, I think it's a negative change.
I do, in a way, agree there is a negative change. I'm not going to say that there isn't, but do I think it's a negative change that he can keep in control? Yes, I do. Because Paul recognizes what has happened to him, but I think the fact that he's able to keep that connection with Gurney, and also that eventually in time he will be able to reconnect with Chani, that will bring him back to a more stable place. That isn't to say that he isn't in a stable place now. He is. But he realizes that, yes, has he been kind of suckered, or kind of has he been manipulated, even though he has fought against that manipulation as hard as he can by the Bene Gesserit? Yeah, he has. He has been manipulated, but he has a trump card, no pun intended whatsoever. The Bene Gesserit cannot control him. The Bene Gesserit know now that they can't control him, that none of their powers or abilities will have any effect on him whatsoever. If he can silence Reverend Mother once, they stand no chance in hell of doing anything to co-opt him or control him to any degree. Irulan is a figurehead. The only reason Irulan is still alive is so that he can keep the throne. That's it. Until Paul is in a place ultimately of ultimate power, but also ultimate, but of isolation, because he's had to become something that he did not want to become. He has been isolated by this myth, by this
I don't know.
prophecy.
I feel drinking the water changed him.
It did.
I
I
think
agree with
I
you.
think I think we have a different character kind of where the new
We
guy is more than willing to manipulate and to take advantage of this context, which has been
well,
falsely
here's the thing.
portrayed to the
Here's the
Furman.
thing. Here's the thing. I do agree with you. He is willing to use this legend, this prophecy of the Lisa Al Gaib. Yes. But
When
is he going
prior
to
he
be
was
a
not,
ruthless?
but prior he wasn't. See, that's a big shift. That's a 180.
Well, here's the thing. You have to remember, Paul's vision is not perfect until after he takes the water of life. He doesn't realize that he has to go down this road if he's going to achieve what he wants to achieve. If he wants to take down the Harkonnens, if he wants to kill the Baron, if he wants to take out the Emperor, so that he can free the Fremen and free Arrakis from under Imperial control, he is going to have to. He realizes he has to go down that road. No other way will work. He realizes this. I agree with you. He is using the prophecy. I wholeheartedly agree with you that he's using the prophecy. Does he like doing it? No. I don't think there's any joy in Paul's heart for what he's going to do to the Fremen to any degree, because he just wants them to be able to live free. He wants Arrakis to ultimately be free.
But I'm not
Is he a
sure I
little
buy
bit?
into that. I don't know if
Does
I
he?
buy that he cares for the Fremen. I'm not sure I
And that's a
fully.
different perspective. I mean, both. Here's the thing.
Maybe it's a
Well, here's the thing,
byproduct of
Zach.
his
Both things
goal.
can be true.
Yeah, well, okay,
In my
but maybe it's
opinion,
a
your opinion,
byproduct.
and that's entirely fine. Both things. And here's the thing: we may never fully know until we see Dune Messiah. That's the thing. We may never fully know what Paul's full intentions were. We believe, or at least I have one perspective, you have a differing perspective. I believe Paul doesn't want to use the Fremen, but he realizes that he has to, and he has a tool that he can use to control them. But for their own benefit, but also for his own. But there is also your perspective where you believe he. Did you say he does or does care for Fremen?
Does not. Well, I don't know if does not is fair, but that it could be a byproduct of the goal itself, a non sequitur. But I base this point of
Yeah.
view on the change of his mother, how the water changed her. I feel he underwent a
Yes.
similar dramatic change.
Well, and here's the thing, too. Here's the thing you have to remember. They are both Harkonnen. She's full-blooded Harkonnen. He's half. Okay, she is half Harkonnen herself, because we don't honestly know in this particular version who her mother is. In the prequel books, we learned that her mother is the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohayim, the one we see in this movie, or in both
Written by
movies.
who, though? Written by
Okay,
whom?
the three prequel books, House Carino, House Harkonnen, and House Atreides, were written by Herbert's son, Brian. Now,
I disregard him offhand. That's it.
okay, and that
I don't care.
you know what,
You know
and
what I mean?
yeah, and that's fine. If that's your prerogative, that's your prerogative. We can leave the mother completely ambiguous, but the main thing is,
Sorry to interrupt
this.
your point there, but
No,
the
no, it's
books
fine. Zach,
written
it's
by the
fine. It's fine.
children, I don't count them.
Okay, and that's fine. You don't have to. We can leave the whole mother aspect ambiguous. But the fact is, she is Harkonnen. Paul is Harkonnen because his grandfather is obviously the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, which is a very cold and calculating and cruel individual. We can understand that the Water of Life may have amplified that aspect of their personalities, but in Jessica's circumstance, she's under a lot of other stress besides just her Harkonnen heritage. She's under she's got all the other knowledge and lives of the Reverend Mothers racing through her mind, hearing their voices, hearing what they have to say. She has her own unborn daughter talking to her in the womb. That's going to play an impact on how Jessica behaves. The same is partially true of Paul. He now realizes he is Harkonnen, and he says that we will fight or we will be like the Harkonnen. In a way, he is, but he still has the Atreides part of his personality or of his upbringing, whatever way you want to categorize it, that balances out that other aspect of his personality. He
I
does
agree
behave
to
as
that.
Harkonnen. He
Yeah.
does behave as Harkonnen in part, yes, but subtract the cruelty and the cold-heartedness and the brutality of the Harkonnens. But
No, he's
add
not like
in
them in that way.
no, no, but he can and he will be manipulative and controlling, but he's doing it both for his own end, but also ultimately for the Fremen's end to free Arrakis from the control of the Imperium. Now, granted, he is the Emperor now, but he will let the Fremen be. He will leave them be. He won't hunt them down. He won't try to exterminate them. He will let them live their own
Well,
lives, their own culture, and everything.
another departure from the original concept of the Shawnee relationship at the end,
Mhm.
specifically,
Is the fact that she
l-
leaves.
l- would leave the viewer to question Paul's point of view and motives.
And I can see that, and honestly, I felt the same way. But knowing what I know about the other books and the other stories, Chani will eventually come back to Paul. I have to believe that. But it's going to be it's harder for her, and I think it's a more realistic um presentation of their relationship because
Mhm.
she can't bear the fact that he had to go down this road, but she also can't bear the fact that he has to marry in title only the emperor's daughter. She believes that he loves her, and obviously he does because he echoes that line that he says earlier on in the film, "I will love you for as long as I breathe," and he says it again before the fight between him and Fade, "I will love you for as long as I breathe." Paul loves her wholeheartedly and devotedly, but unfortunately he has to go down a path that ultimately going to wound her, but that's why he said what he said to Chani in that moment. It's one line, but it's a powerful line. And I think it
Yeah,
says a
well,
lot about I think it says
I
a
I
lot
th-
about Paul's mental state at that time.
I I think you're right, but again, it plays up the element of suspect when it comes to Paul.
I don't think I think some of Paul's motives might be a little suspect, but they're not wholly suspect. And here's the reason why. Even after he takes the water of life, his goal is to, like I said, his goal is twofold. One to avenge his father, the other is to free the Fremen. One ties into the other because he needs to draw the Emperor there. He needs to draw the Emperor out into the open, which he does. He succeeds when he sends that message cylinder to um, Kaitan, to the Emperor. It draws him out. He also knows that it'll draw the Baron out. Those are the two people he needs to take down. Fade Routh is just an afterthought, in a manner of speaking. So, Paul, here's the thing. There have been a lot of essays and videos done on the character of Paul Atreides throughout the years, and I've watched my fair share of them. Some people don't always describe Paul as a hero, although there are elements of the hero's journey in his character arc. But his character arc is almost a subversion of the hero's journey. Because in a manner speaking, Paul is in some ways also a victim. Because he's a victim
totally
of
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is a victim of the Bene Gesserit's manipulation of the Fremen for generations.
And of the Emperor.
Now he's
of the Harkonnen house.
Yeah. But he is also...
Well,
can
I ask you, I do have a question.
Sure.
Is he a different character after he drinks?
The water of life?
Yeah.
There is a change in his personality. Yes, I agree that there is.
But is he a different character?
Is he a different character? Is he a different person?
Mm-hmm.
No. Because Paul's end goals do not change, just the method by which he fulfills them changes. The one line he refuses to cross is to manipulate the Fremen to feed into the whole prophecy of Lisan al-Gaib. That is the one line he will not cross. But he realizes once he allows himself at least partially to absorb part of his Harkonnen heritage, that he is willing now to cross that line. He realizes what he has to do from the start, but he doesn't want to do it because he knows where it leads. It'll lead to genocide on a galactic level. But he doesn't want to go down that road if he can't. If he can,
it takes
stop it.
I got you. It takes a powerful man to accept that kind of an outcome, which he does. I mean, you can feel that weight, which is portrayed throughout the beginning, prior to the drinking of the sacred the water of life.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine doing that, which I think again strengthens his character. I mean, a guy willing to accept that. But again, I do see them as different, but your point of view has influenced mine a little bit, But he was tremendous. I mean,
the free exchange of ideas,
the dialogue, the portrayal, everything you can say was fucking awesome.
Yes,
with him,
I wholeheartedly and sincerely agree. Yes, I mean, this is Grant. I never got a chance to see it, but I'm hoping to get a copy of it here before too long. I'm in a way kind of glad that they did move Dune to everything after the release of Wonka, but from what I heard, his performance in that was actually very well done. I didn't get a chance to see it, but I've heard a lot of good talk about it. So it just goes to show that Timothée Chalamet is a very dynamic and a very talented actor, and I hope sincerely he has a very long and fruitful career. Because as a young man, he has already taken on a massive role that most young actors wouldn't even think about, at least actors at his age, because I think he's just like in his late teens, if not early 20s, if that.
Yeah.
And for him to take on a character as complex as Paul Atreides, he did a good job. Okay, well, good is a understatement. He did a dynamic job.
He did, and he kind of puts the other performances to shame. and I love Kyle.
Well,
But
Kyle MacLachlan's performance, he completely buries. That performance,
there's
honestly, to me is
no doubt.
erased.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Even though I do like
Now,
Kyle quite a bit. Kyle's a good actor, but
he's I'm he's okay.
probably
I'm
miscast. That whole thing was
oh,
miscast. I mean, Lynch's director was
you
miscast, but
think?
Kyle, I think, did a good job with what he had available.
Yeah.
But Chalamet, on the other hand, had all the opportunities lined up.
Yeah.
When Kyle had to go and search at the back of the golf cart for the ball, Chalamet had the ball on a tee.
Right. Honestly, for me, I mean, Alec Newman's performance as Paul Atreides in the sci-fi miniseries, both Dune and Children of Dune, he was
I
very
didn't like
good,
him. I didn't like him.
and that's fair. You didn't like him. You didn't like him. That's your perspective. I liked his performance, but you didn't. That's fine. But Timothy Chalamet as a big screen adaptation for Paul Atreides, this is our Paul. There will never. I mean, I don't see anybody topping this adaptation for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
For as long as film is around, everybody's going to say, you want to watch Dune 2021 and 2024, watch that Dune. Watch Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I would even be thrilled if, and obviously they'll release this on Blu-ray and 4K, and yes, I will obviously get it, but I would be thrilled beyond belief if they almost did like a supercut
Yeah, with
release.
both.
Yeah, even if it's just on 4K and everything, if it's just on home video, if they did a supercut of this and add in maybe some of the other stuff that they couldn't necessarily add in, like if there's any deleted scenes or anything like that that fleshes out things just a little bit more, or just the cinematic release, I'd be fine with that. If they did a supercut and had it just one movie flows right into the other with no credit in between. Or if you just
Yeah,
had Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, I'd be fine with that as well.
that's another great difference. I mean, having a time skip kind of hurts it in the original one. I mean, having it more present, I think,
Yeah.
is the better way to go here, where it does flow as one film,
Mhm.
and you feel like you're watching one storyline rather than there being a barrier in between
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Because Denis Villeneuve knew the weight of the project he was taking on and he took it seriously. He realized, can I at least do two movies? And thankfully, the two studios that funded this, obviously Warner Brothers and Legendary, said, yeah, do two movies. Absolutely. Makes more money for us and gives everybody a better story. Yeah, do two movies. If it had not been for Warner Brothers and Legendary being open minded enough to say, yes, a story of this complexity needs two movies, we would have gotten another train wreck. I mean, okay, maybe not as bad as Lynch's, but a story of this complexity needed two movies. It had to have two movies. It wouldn't have worked any other way.
The Lynch version is one I would do a video with you. As you mentioned at the start, you're doing videos now.
Well,
I would love to do a
unfortunately,
Lynch comparison
well,
because I hate the Lynch version. I mean, to me, it was so painful.
I wouldn't. Here's the thing. I wouldn't mind. I did. This was like I said a couple years ago, so I wouldn't necessarily mind revisiting Dune and doing a comparison between this version and that one. So there's definitely fertile ground there for a good discussion.
Okay.
So I'd definitely be on board for that. And for anybody that's watching this, if you'd like to be a part of that conversation as well, hit me up in my DMs. Obviously, my DMs are open. Unless I got you blocked, and if I have you blocked, it's obviously for a good reason. You want to be a part of that? Hit me up either on Twitter or on Instagram. That's my two main socials. So, but I think we're gonna go with final thoughts, unless there's something else you want to say about Paul, and we'll call it an evening.
I just want to briefly mention the action sequences.
Sure. Yeah, we can absolutely.
I was impressed by the fact that the Furman weapons actually did some damage. I mean, you watch sci-fi all the time, and you see shields and all this stuff. The Furman weapons fucked up the Harkonnen tech, specifically those ray guns.
Oh yeah, the laser
So
guns. Mhm.
so it was, to me, it was cool to see sci-fi weapons actually doing some damage.
Yes, I agree. Well, here's the thing: everything that we see is based in the Dune universe. The laser guns, the Chris knives, the rocket launchers, all of that is all actual real tech that did exist. There's no weird active voice activated laser ray guns or something like that. That doesn't exist. Sorry, David Lynch with that whole thing.
Ugh.
No, no, that for me just does not work. So, um,
Well,
the
David
fight
Lynch
scene between,
apparently hates his Dune as much as we do.
well, yeah, because the studio screwed with it.
They
The
did, yeah.
studio screwed with it big
Yeah.
time. Yeah, they screwed his movie up. It was supposed to be 4 hours long originally.
And
It was
I
supposed to
already
be a
said
lot better,
I
a lot
love
more fun.
David. I love him, but
Yeah, I like David
that
Lynch
fucking
I
movie.
like David Lynch as a director, but his Dune absolutely is a massive disservice to Frank Herbert's work.
Well, to
This is
quote
a
Dave,
absolute
oh, it's a sadness.
yes, it is. So, but I will. You mentioned the action scenes, the fight scenes. I think obviously
Hmm.
the fight scene between Paul and Thade, brutal, quick, intense, realistic, and those two young men absolutely brought it. They brought their A games. They had
They
their
did.
moves down. They did, as Zendaya was talking about this in an interview. She's like, they could be cutting up and chatty and friendly to one another, but when that camera goes and that fight scene goes, they're right in it. They trained for months rigorously on the choreography for that fight. They almost, I think, I'll give a comparison. I think it's a comparison you would appreciate. They trained as hard as Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen did for the fight scene at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. Those guys are
They
really
trained.
the gold standard.
Yeah, they trained that. Austin Butler and Timothy Chalamet trained that hard for that fight scene, and it shows. So, but
Hmm.
honestly, yeah,
The Furman jumping out with little straws in the sand. I mean, come on. Come on. I mean, it's so good. And
yeah, the breathe the breathing apparatuses. Yeah, I like that. It was simplistic, but it was realistic. It worked.
and them
So,
butchering the Harkonnen in basically the first scene. Damn. I mean, it's so good.
oh yeah, the opening fight scene. Yeah, that was. The other piece of tech I liked was the hover units because they showed that it isn't just something that the Baron has; it's something everybody has access to. Now, granted, they did show it in Dune Part One, but it's more well represented, and we see it more throughout in Dune Part Two because the
Yeah, well, the
Harkonnens have it.
Baron's
Obviously,
is
yeah,
implanted in his fucking
yeah,
spine. Even
yeah,
creepier.
yeah. The other ones are a device that you can wear externally.
Hmm.
So it show well. Also, it's also more compact. It's smaller, so it shows an advancement in that technology as well.
Dude, I'll
So
send you a video. I saw this awesome video essay about the Baron and how he is the embodiment of something artificial, which I think is very cool too.
yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd love to see that. So, well, any final thoughts, my friend, that we haven't already brought up to this evening?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, man. It's great to see you, and I'm glad you're
Glad to,
back on YouTube. Um, this is like one of the
I
best movies I've seen in the last like 10 years. I thought it was so good, man.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. It's so good. I saw it twice. I saw it in IMAX, like I said, the opening night, and then I saw it. I just saw it yesterday because I was like, I need to go see this again. Even if it's on just a
Hmm.
regular standard screen, I don't care. I need to see this again. And honestly, it was just as good on a standard screen as it was IMAX. Was it better? Was it even better in IMAX? Yes. I wanted that experience at least once. So, but it was an experience that I love. I love IMAX. I love a good movie in IMAX. So Anytime I get a chance, I'll be in an IMAX theater because I love that format. Absolutely do.
And Denis Villeneuve, I mean, has maintained his fucking credos. He's so good.
Yes.
He is yet to fail. Yet to fail. Wow.
Yeah. His movies may not always hit in the box office, but they always leave a lasting impression otherwise.
They do.
But
Well,
he's had
his film Prisoners was a commercial. I think it kind of broke even, but
Mhm,
like 10 years later, it was #1 on Netflix.
mhm. I believe it. He's that good. His work
He's that
stands.
good. Yep.
His work speaks for itself. So, but if I was to give this a score, it's
Ooh.
perfection. It's a 10. It's perfect.
Nothing is a 10.
This is a 10.
Nothing is a no, it's not. Nothing is a 10. It for me, it's like a
This is a
9, a a 9.1.
that's your perspective, and you're entitled to it.
There's no
For me,
such
it's a
thing
10.
as a 10, ambassador.
This
Come on
is
now.
Zach.
Nothing is a
This is the
10.
this is, and I'll stick by that. So, anyways, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight, whether you were on YouTube or on X, on Twitter. Glad y'all hope y'all enjoyed the stream. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. Obviously, catch us on the replay. Leave your thoughts down in the comments about anything Mr. Zach over here brought up and everything, or something we may have missed, or just elaborate on anything we may have discussed. So, obviously, I will keep you all updated on my next upload and my next stream and everything on my socials and everything. So be keeping an eye out for that. And as I mentioned at the start tonight, it's a new year. It's the same ambassador, but it's a better ambassador in terms of my health. Let's put it that way. So, anyways, folks, y'all have a good night. We will see you all next time. And until next time, as I like to say, and as I have said in the past, be yourself, be honest, be authentic, and never take yourself too seriously. And if you do all those things, you'll always have a place in the ambassadorial wing. Y'all have a good night.
Let's be friends.
Have you not?